should see either. I think I should start all my videos like that. Hey guys. How you guys doing? This is my second video. Actually, this is, full disclosure, my second time filming it because the first time I made the unfortunate decision to actually turn the camera around and have it facing towards me when I was filming, which seemed cool because I said, well, then I'll be able to see myself. I'll be able to like see my movements, and that was a terrible idea. I immediately regretted it as soon as I did it. Like, it's so much better, like, if I can just stare into the little camera and talk to you guys and pretend that it's you and you're sitting here and we're speaking. When I see myself, it's just a catastrophe waiting to happen. Like, it was bad. So anyway, this is the refilm. This is the re-up. But yeah, so I feel like I always talk to you guys like when I get back from the grocery store, like on my coronavirus run. And it makes sense because that's like my social moment of the day. And then I get back and I have my social YouTube moment. So that's where I am now. I back from my grocery run, and yeah. It was an interesting experience. Every time I go out, I can't help but notice people and the way that they're dealing with this virus. Like, we are all dealing with it so differently. And I think that's something worth talking about. Because of course, geographically, it's very different for all of us. I've talked to people online that are in places where they say that there's hardly any change at all. They get up, they go to their job like normal. The only difference is maybe some of the restaurants aren't open, but it's life as usual, and they're not really impacted. And then there are people like in New York City. There are people that are like in Italy where they can't leave their homes, where people around them are dying, where everything has changed. And I don't know, so for my international followers, like, the United States, the way it works here is we're a federalist nation, meaning that we have a federal government that can make rules and basically give guidance, but we are also a nation where every state has power of its own. So every state in the United States is kind of dealing with this differently. There are some states that are hit really hard and have locked down completely, have yet to reopen. There are some states that were not really affected and that still locked down to prevent infection. And then there are some states that decided to kind of be lenient with the lockdown. And I guess we're still seeing how that will play out in terms of how many people get sick and how many people die. But yeah, it's just it's a state-by-state thing. But what I've noticed is it's not only geography that affects how this is affecting us. It's also our personal situation and our personalities. And what I mean by that is I've unfortunately, and I know this isn't a bad thing. I know it's not coming from a bad place. But there are many people that are talking about how, you know, since the virus hit, look, the animals are back. Nature has reclaimed its domain. The ozone layer is healing. Pollution has been alleviated to a certain extent. We should be grateful for this time. This is a blessing. And while all those things are very, very good, they're very positive, and we should be thankful for them, the way that some influencers and some people are talking about this, to me, seems very tone deaf. Because when you come from a place where your life may have been affected and changed, but that's all, like, you're just dealing with a change, it's very easy for you to look at things and say, I appreciate this. But there are people whose lives have been hurt very badly by this. And I'm not just talking about the people that are sick. Like I told you guys, I had an uncle that was on a ventilator. which means he had a 12 to 16% chance of survival. And thank God he survived, but that's tough. I'm not just talking about people like that or people like me who have family members like that. I'm talking about the way that we all come from very different circumstances. We all came into coronavirus from very different places. I am thankful. I have a house above my head. I have the food that I need to eat. And while I'm financially in a tough spot, I've managed and I'm safe. There are people who don't have a safe house to be in during this time. Imagine. And I'm not just talking about physical abuse. I'm talking about emotional abuse, mental abuse. There are people whose quarantine house is not a safe space. Those people are going through hell right now. There are people who don't know how they're going to pay next month's rent, this month's rent. There are people who have children and they don't know what to do with their children. Either they don't know how to take care of all these kids by themselves, or they don't know what they're going to do in terms of being able to survive because they've lost their job. There are people that are coming from a number of situations. Some are very dangerous, some are in very tough situations right now. And it's a little bit tone deaf to tell them all that they should accept this blessing that we've been given. Now, on the flip side, I do think that it is worth trying to find a silver lining to all this. But when we talk about that, we just need to make sure that we come from a place of empathy and understanding that for some people that's going to be a really tough thing to do. And their first concern, as it should be, is their survival. So I tried to figure out, so of course that's situational. And we talked about geographically, but we're also affected by this based on who we are as people, And this is what I kind of noticed when I'm talking to people about this. My initial impression was that, dang, this time has got to be tough for extroverts. If you get your energy from other people, imagine you are by yourself for the past 2 months, wild. But it's not just that. It's not just extroverts. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to one of my best friends earlier today, and I could almost hear the tears in his voice, if that makes sense. He seemed to be close to a cry the whole time he was talking. And he's an introvert. I think, if I had to guess, he's an INFJ. He might be an INTJ. He is somebody who I thought would be dealing with this better than most people. He has a great family, great wife, great kid, well, not a baby anymore, but great little kid. He's got a job that's really looked out for its employees during this time. He's not at full hours, but he still has hours. He's an introvert, so I said, he's a reasonable dude, he's probably coping with this just fine. But what he said is, he described it as a low-grade anxiety that has not gone away, and he's been unable to get proper sleep for the past several weeks, a single night of proper sleep. And I said, why? Why? What's bothering you about this? And he said, well, number one, my child, who I had done everything I could to build a life for, build a routine and a life for, has not been able to go to school, has not been able to see his friends. His child, who's so sweet, he said, my child is finding ways to ask daddy for something new. Can you cook something new? Are there any new toys to play with, Dad? His child is really well adjusted and really social, and he has not seen his friends for months. My friend is also worried about providing for his kid. his company was not able to get a small business loan. Those loans, many of them were taken by large companies, and there was nothing left for companies of his size. So he's left in a situation where he doesn't know if he's going to have a company to go back to after all this. He loves his job, and he doesn't know if we'll have it anymore. He has asthma, as I do. We both had childhood asthma, and it's gotten better as an adult, but technically we are part of a vulnerable group right now. So he's worried about himself getting sick, he's worried about his family members getting sick. He has some immune stuff, so he's even more in jeopardy. He said that he's having trouble taking each day as it comes. And it made me realize, like, the way that this pandemic has affected people is probably directly correlated with the amount it's changed our lives from the life that we'd like to be living. And what I mean by that is not just how much has this changed our life, but what is the way that we prefer to live, and how different are we having to live right now than that way? And I think that's a good measurement of how happy or unhappy or anxious or not anxious we are. We can deal with change, but when there's change that is threatening our stability and threatening our happiness or the happiness of our family, that's a tough pill to swallow. So, I think when he talks about, it's tough for me, Garrett, to take each day as it comes. I don't know how to make plans. That hit me because I can identify with that. I'm a planner. I think a lot of INFJs are planners, actually. A lot of INTJs plan. A lot of ENFJs plan. There's a lot of types that plan a lot. Meaning that we like to be prepared and feel prepared. Well, guess what? Coronavirus had a different idea. And there's really nothing we can do because we can't predict what will happen. This is literally unprecedented. No one predicted this, and we have nothing to base our guesses off of. Like, we don't know what tomorrow will bring. So that's tough for us. And when his voice, like I said, was somewhere between a sigh and a cry, is how I would describe it. And I get it. That's why we have to be really careful when we talk about this. Like, I did talk to him about finding silver linings, but for him, he's first trying to deal with the situation in front of him. So here's the thing. Since I was young, since I was in high school, I've always known that I've struggled dealing with things that I can't control. I worry about these things. I think a lot of us do. And one of the things that has helped me through this is I actually got a poster of the Serenity prayer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it goes like this. God grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept the things I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's extremely relevant to the times we're going through right now for a lot of us. For me, that changed my life. Every place that I lived, whether it was my dorm in college, whether it was my apartment after, I had that posted somewhere. Either it was on the wall, like I got it framed, or I just wrote it on a sticky note and put it on my computer, and I read it out loud to myself. Because what I realized is that I've never struggled with the courage to change the things I can. I've struggled with the serenity to accept the things I can't. And until we accept the things we can't change, we don't have room to let in the light. What I mean by that is, in order to make room for the beautiful things, in order to make room for our passions, for the things that we love, for the things that we want to pursue, we have to first let go of the things that we can't change. It's like we can only hold so much. Let's hold on to the things that give us hope, give us motivation, and give us love. And I hope that doesn't sound like abstract or like, you know, because it's very real. For instance, my friend told me a story where he walked out of his house and he walked out of his house and he's noticed like his people in his community are not social distancing. They are not wearing masks. They're not adhering to the things that they need to, at least in his eyes, do in order to fix this whole thing. And so he becomes frustrated and desperate and anxious, you know? And that's what I mean. Those things are outside of his control. And it's frustrating, and I understand. Like, I feel the same way, you know? It's like, gosh, guys, like, I need this to be fixed so I can go back to normal, so I can provide for my kids, so, like, I can be safe. And you guys aren't doing it. But that's the thing. That is outside of his control, and that's outside of all of our control. We can help spread a message and encourage people to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, the more we hold on to that stuff that we can't control, the more miserable we're going to be. For our own sake, we have to let it go so we can focus on whatever is next for us. So we can pursue that next passion, so we can concentrate on studying for that next exam, so we can start applying to those next jobs, so we can figure out what that next passion is, or we can figure out, maybe it's just looking at what's in front of us and appreciating it, right? Like, maybe it's just letting go of that stuff so we can sit down with our family or girlfriend, boyfriend, and say, wow, I'm lucky I have this. And that's the one cool thing about the pandemic, is that I think it's kind of teaching us what we should be thankful for, like what we should appreciate having in our life, and maybe also helping us figure out some of the things we could do without. But it's doing more than just, I think, affecting us personally. I think it's doing more than teaching us about ourselves. It's teaching us about humanity. I think I'm going to challenge myself to talk to a person about their lockdown experience. I was going to say maybe once a day, but maybe like a thorough conversation once a week. And yeah, maybe, if it's interesting, maybe I'll come back here and share it with you guys. I'm also interested to hear you guys' stories about it too. Anyway, so how are you guys dealing with this? Are you bothered? Are you enjoying the peace? Are you worried about everyone else and, you know, how they're doing? Or are you so overwhelmed with what's going on in your own life that you don't even have time, you know, to think about that kind of stuff? Just, I feel like there's a million of us, and we're all dealing with this in a million different ways. And that's the cool thing about this spot. It's, we're here and we're sharing our experiences, you know. This is the human experience, and that's dope. Alright guys, thanks for sitting with me again today, and more stories next time.